From Microbe TV, this is Office Hours for Wednesday, August 6th, 2025. I'm Vincent Racaniello, and welcome to your viral corner of the internet. Joining me tonight from New York, Daniel Griffin.
Hello, everyone. I'm looking forward to this.
People love having you here, so we got an hour of your time. Let's make the most of it. What's on the tie tonight, Daniel?
So it's anthrax.
Anthrax. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Anthrax is one of my favorites, I have to say.
Why is that?
Well, not the disease, but just the pattern. I like the bow tie. I like the red and the gray, and it goes well. This is a gray seersucker, so it's pulls a little bit of the gray instead of the traditional blue seersucker suit. So.
All right. Okay, folks, get your questions ready. Anthrax tie. That's right, Mark Martin. Good to see everyone again. All right, let's start right off with a question from Les. Well, first, let me thank our moderators for coming. I'm sorry. I'm so excited. We have Steph tonight. We have Tom Steinberg. We have Les Fabi. Thank you for joining us tonight and moderating and making this Vanity Nutrition, too. Welcome all. Thanks for moderating. We really appreciate it. We have a question from Les. What about RFK Jr. killing more mRNA funding? You've heard that, Daniel, no doubt.
Yeah, I saw that today. So all the HHS. I'm sort of curious about the details about how they're going to go about this exactly. Is it HHS funding? Is it HHS contracts? But apparently it totals $500 million that are being pulled away from going into funding of mRNA-based vaccines. And it's really, it's part of the playbook. Nobody's surprised here. The Novavax people are delighted, right? Because that's sort of risen. Because that, if we're going to be stepping away from this technology, particularly when it comes to COVID vaccines, then maybe Novavax will finally, see the light of day more than they have in the past. A lot of people are commenting that short-sighted. What the biggest short-sighted is really the issue of who's going to make mRNA vaccines, because the mRNA technology is not going to go away. It's just this very interesting idea where the U.S., which has been a leader in certain types of technology, is stepping away, creating a vacuum, letting other people do it. It's disastrous. I don't know how political we're allowed to be on this show here, Vincent, but this is not a move that makes America great. This is a move where certain people are catering to their supporters, catering to the people that got them here and maybe are going to get them somewhere else. It's based upon drinking some Kool-Aid, having some misconceptions about what's really going on here. And I think that hopefully there's some lessons here, right? One of the big things that a lot of us talked about and a lot of us tried to do, Vince and you as sort of a leader in this thing, was educate. As the mRNA vaccines were coming on the scene and this was a new thing, Microbe TV spent a lot of time trying to educate people. What is this technology? What does it do? Now, what percent of the budget, the Operation Warp Speed, the rollout of the vaccines under Biden, how much of that went to educating people? Nothing. There was nothing was allocated for that. So I hope people realize is education is key, because the other side that wants to sell billions of dollars a year in nutraceuticals and alternatives, they're spending a lot of time on their misinformation campaign. We need to actually educate people so they can appreciate, so that, there are countries in the world that did not have mandates. What they had is educational initiatives. And then people are clamoring, I want the vaccine. I want the vaccine. And then you don't have this response where you say, well, if you don't want it, now that we've taught you what a wonderful thing it is, that's a lot different than the situation we're in right now.
So he said, RFK Jr. said, it's because they don't prevent infections. That was his excuse, right?
Which, again, that was an education issue. And I'll throw like a former CDC director under the bus, right? Remember the whole Providence thing, where over 100 people were they're in Providence, which is Cape Cod curls up. A whole bunch of people vaccinated, got COVID. Nobody ended up in the hospital. Do great job of preventing serious disease. And instead of celebrating this as this is what vaccines do, and I think even Vincent, you got a communication from someone at the medical school. Wait, what do you mean vaccines don't prevent infection? Right? I mean, this
Yeah,
is like a
sure.
medical trained person. The amount of ignorance here, and I use that in a kind way, but we were not taught this in medical school. We were not taught the really important subtleties. All this time spent on like molecular medicine and personalized medicine and molecular biology and the basics of what do vaccines do and how do they work? That was not being taught in the medical schools. That was not being communicated during this pandemic. And so, yeah, people are like, I don't understand it. And as I've been saying for years, when people say, I got the flu shot, how come I'm in the hospital with flu? I'm like, yeah, but are you dead?
Hopefully they answered. But what is the effect of removing the subsidy? The companies can Pfizer and Moderna can still make vaccines. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's no prohibition here, and I think maybe with that bad player being removed from the FDA, there'll be a little more sort of honest communication about what the expectations are of getting a product to market, not having some person unilaterally like change the rules at the 12th hour, right?
Yeah.
Past the 11th, like everything's in, everything's, when you're trying to develop a product that is going to be licensed, approved for use in human beings, there's a lot of communication back and forth. You're told like, okay, what trials need to be done. Those trials are reviewed, what endpoints are expected. And then, you sort of, you follow the rule book, you follow the playbook. And all of a sudden we had, recently this issue that I just don't like that. I'm going to unilaterally like limit people's access to therapies that had gone through all the hoops that had been laid out for them. So yeah, I don't think this is going to mean that mRNA vaccines can't be licensed or mRNA products can't be licensed. That's at least not what this is about. But I have to say, mRNA vaccines are part of these evil boogeyman that the RFK Jr. group are anti. They see it as gene therapy. So this may be the first attack.
So they can still make mRNA vaccines. They just won't have a contract. And does Novavax have a contract? Do you know?
So Novavax, my understanding is there's no like federal contract with Novavax to make their COVID vaccine. It was just that they went through this process, and actually, if anything, it was sort of an encumbrance on them that when they got approved, there's now this: you've got to continue to do post-marketing analysis. We need to see certain types of efficacy studies going forward, particularly with any updated formulations. And there's no reason this mRNA vaccine technology, if profitable, can't be funded in other ways, venture capitalists, all kinds of other areas around the world. And that's what I think is going to happen is, you've probably gotten these letters, Vincent, or maybe it's an age thing, but, come to our country where we are friendly to scientists. They're trying to recruit the scientists and the people who are going to make these innovations to other countries, right, that are ready to step into this vacuum.
Sure. No, I don't get those letters. I'm not a practicing scientist anymore. It's okay. Did you see the Legionella outbreak in Harlem this past few weeks? Pretty big.
Yeah, I know people are asking about that. Now there's a second person has died. Over 50 people have gotten ill. And, it's in a certain region there, really, really a difficult situation because, why do people get Legionella, Legionnaire's disease? So maybe we can talk a little bit about this. This is a disease that was not recognized when I was born, right? So it's something that was recognized in I believe it was the 70s, right? It was in
1976, the Legionnaires Convention in Philadelphia.
Yeah, so perfect. Like, how can you forget that day, right? So. I'm a little kid. The Legionnaires are getting together. They're in this hotel. A lot of them get sick. They treat them with erythromycin because that was sort of like what they had back then. And fortunately, that was the right drug. What happens is this pathogen is an intracellular microbe. And why is it in the water? It's not swimming around. I love to talk about this on rounds. It's that it's in the paramecium and the amoeba that are in the water in the air conditioners. So, maybe you don't do a great job with keeping those air conditioners and the water clean. That stuff gets blown through the system. People breathe it in. There's often kind of like these investigations where you find the point source of where this is going on. Sometimes they do silly things like they clean the water towers, which has never been shown to do anything instead of really addressing where this is going on. But they do that for show. I mean, I was at a meeting and head of the Department of Health, New York City, was there, and someone was like, "So you do all that? Does it actually make a difference?" Like, well, no, but people demand it. Like, okay, whatever, politics, right? But yeah, and it's tough because a lot of people did not recognize that Legionnaire's disease is even an issue in New York. And the other is, I should mention the testing, right? So you breathe it in, you don't get it from someone else. Someone with Legionnaire's disease and not give it to someone else, but you breathe it in. You get sick. There's a lot of these pearls they teach, which are probably not true because we only recognize like the sickest people with low sodiums and diarrhea and all the rest. But you get sick, and a lot of times you'll test a urine for a Legionella antigen. But that Legionella antigen only picks up maybe 40 or 50% of the Legionella out there, right? So it misses a lot. So they've sent out this educational campaigns at NYP, New York Presbyterian, right there at Millstein, basically saying like you should be looking for Legionnaire's disease, not just with the urine, but you have to order a special sputum test as well. So really got to, otherwise you're missing a lot of these cases.
But the source is typically cooling water, could be a shower head, right? Contaminated shower head.
Yeah, so sometimes it can actually get that way from a shower, right? Because you're breathing that in.
Yeah.
Air conditioners really are the classic, and we see peaks. We see when people turn on the air conditioner for the first time, and it's been sitting there, or it's September and they're just not cleaning stuff because I'm going to be turning it off soon anyway. But here we are, early August, and dozens of people getting sick. A couple of people have already died.
You don't have any in Long Island, do you?
Well, it's interesting. I took care of some folks at Columbia when I was there a few weeks ago. We had a couple of cases while I was there. I'm trying to think if I've had any recent on Long Island. We do periodically see them, but I think it's been a little while since I've seen a case.
Viruses Luna wants to know what your PhD was about. Okay.
All right. Very excited. So it was a PhD in molecular medicine, but what was it really about? So I go into this lab of Tom Rothstein, and Tom Rothstein and his crew. I say there's about 12 people in the world who care about something called a B1 cell, right? So most people learn about B cells, and they're learning about, you get exposed to something, and these B cells see that in the germinal center, and they make antibodies. But there is a B1 cell that actually precedes the B2 cells that you're familiar with in development. They develop in the fetal liver. They develop in the bone marrow. We know a lot about them from mice. They live in the peritoneal cavity. And the repertoire of these B1 cells is actually evolutionarily selected. So you come into the world with B cells that make mostly IgM, that protects against E. coli and staph and strep pneumo and basically all these things that you're going to see. And there's even a sort of a pre-programmed expansion of these B1 cells. So at least what we knew about the B1 cells in mice is that if you do not have B1 cells, you don't make it that week, right? We always talk about, I'm going to do a serology test. I'll test for IgG. The IgM is going to take 7 to 10 days. The IgG is going to take 2 to 3 weeks. Oh my gosh, it's like trying to get in to see the doctor. I'll be dead by then. But you have this shield of IgM, evolutionarily selected and produced by B1 cells, that gets you that 7 to 10 days. Now, so my PhD was, hey, can I identify the human B1 cell? And so that was what my PhD was. And a couple of publications in the Journal of Experimental Medicine. I think my first publication was the longest article ever published in Journal of Experimental Medicine. It was like 30 pages because it was really like a high bar to be able to say, like, this is the phenotype. Here are these cells. Here's what they're doing. They're constitutively producing these antibodies. Look at what these antibodies target. Look at the different way the B cell receptor, signaling goes on here. So that was it. So the UNB1 cell.
Where was that done? What university?
So I actually did that at the Feinstein Institute. So it was the same institute where Betty Diamond worked, or still works. That was actually ultimately the connection with Steve Goff and coming to Columbia.
Okay. Luna also wants to know if you have a cat.
So I don't have a cat, but we have very close family friends that are almost sort of part of the extended family, and they have 2 cats. So we've got a couple dogs. They've got a couple dogs and 2 cats. One of the cats is a Maine Coon cat. It's quite an impressive cat.
That's a big cat.
I had a cat
right?
like through college, but unfortunately my cat got eaten by a mountain lion. This is when I was living in Colorado.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Tom writes, big paper in Nature on zoonosis and Mpox virus, a constant trickle of spillover as well as sustained transmission. Yeah, we did a similar paper a while ago showing that there is human transmission, which you can see by ApoBec mutation marks, and then there's spillover, which doesn't have the ApoBec as much. Yeah. Okay, one of our moderators, Steph, says, Daniel, I have a sty. Haven't had one since childhood. I'm 69. Is my immune system failing me already? They're mostly staph, right? Could it be a virus?
Yeah, so we think they're mostly staph, and usually these get better without actually antimicrobials. Usually with like warm compresses applied, so you're basically getting site control. It's going to drain out of there. So that's usually the recommendation. But occasionally, if that's not working, we'll actually use a topical antimicrobial ointment. So, warm, moist compresses, not too hot. Don't hurt yourself. But then feel free to reach out to your doctor if that's not going to get it better. But we don't think it's virus related.
John writes, yeah, there's a big chikungunya outbreak in China, right? Nipah virus. Are these concerning enough to come up in upcoming episodes? I don't know if you're going to talk about it.
I'm particularly interested in chikungunya. There was a big outbreak in India, and chikungunya is one of those diseases where there's a post-acute sequelae, this ongoing arthritis, and in some people, like 5% of people, it's still a problem a year out. So there are some concerns here about what's going on with chikungunya. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. Keep an eye on Nipah. I mean, the people who are running the show think that we're done with pandemics, but apparently we're not done. There's all kinds of viruses and disease out there. It's not all just about keeping the hair dry.
Lori wants to know, are there any data indicating superiority among the 3 RSV vaccines?
So they've not done head-to-head studies with the RSV vaccines. Now, people kind of look and they say, but the mRNA vaccine, I'm looking at that data and I'm comparing that to the other data. It's not head-to-head, but boy, during that second season, it looked a little crummy compared to, so it's the Moderna mRNA vaccine compared to the other vaccines out there. So I sort of leave that out there. It's not head-to-head, but boy, the mRNA vaccine really is not looking so great that next year.
It's just they're not automatically really good. That's the thing about mRNA, right? Like any other vaccine platform, it can work with one pathogen and not with another.
Yep. And sometimes it's not even the platform, but it's sort of what you put in the platform, right? It's like what particular protein. It can be characteristics of the antigen that's being put in there. So. But it is a great tool for really quickly getting something, out the gate, as we saw.
Kang writes, I broke Vincent's rule of never going on a cruise and I caught a cold, not COVID. That gave me a drippy nose. I was feeling better, but it rebounded. Do URT infections have a rebound phase? Why?
So they do. Oh my gosh. People are like, Kang, it's good to see you there. We'll have to go out to dinner again next time we're in your part of the world. But it's the same thing. You get this period of viral replication. I sort of talked about, bemoaned the fact that it takes like 7 to 10 days for that, like the immune system really like kicks in. That first week, you're just relying on that IgM B1 cell antibody shield and maybe some T cell activity. But yeah, we see this a lot. It's really interesting that it wasn't really recognized. And it was recognized, I should say, when you go back, for instance, and this may have been why we treated pneumonia for so long. It was described decades ago that people have pneumonia, start to get better, and then they have kind of this rebound during the second week of symptoms. But I think as we've all realized, like 5 days of antimicrobial therapy for pneumonia, it's plenty. 5 days of antiviral therapy, it's plenty. That rebound, it's an inflammatory process.
Lise writes, do you know if Novavax will be available by fall or early winter?
So Novavax is anticipating August, September. So yeah, it should be ready there for the fall, and maybe that's a lead into like what are we expecting? What is the cycle? So we're finally starting to see a rise in the COVID wastewater, and starting to see a little bit of a rise in ER visits. So it looks like a little bit late for this rise. It'd be interesting to see, like, is it going to just sort of rise into a fall wave? Is it going to rise and drop as we've seen historically? But yeah, Novavax should be available.
So the wastewater data come out today, right?
I looked at it today, Vincent. You and I'll peruse it.
Talk about it tomorrow.
It's on the way up, just a little.
That's too bad. Oh, well, I tried by being optimistic to get it not to go up. Melinda writes, Daniel, what nutrients are depleted by viruses?
That's an interesting comment. Vincent, do you have any comments about that?
So Melinda asked this last week, and yeah. I said, I don't really know. I know that viruses manipulate metabolism in infected cells, right? So a lot of viruses turn up the import of glucose into the glycolytic cycle, right, which makes energy, which they need, and also makes precursors for lipids and triphosphates. But I don't know about nutrient depletion at all. No, I've never come across that.
Yeah, I don't actually. I mean, we spent a lot of time talking about vitamin D, for instance. During the COVID period, people doing different research studies. Vitamin C got brought up. Some pretty bad studies on vitamin C, right? That was out of the, when you know something is true, you can fudge the science to support it, right? That guy. And the vitamin D, it looks like having good vitamin D levels is not going to keep you from getting infected, but it might have some impact on severity. But then again, is that a marker, right? People with low vitamin D tend to be older folks, et cetera, et cetera. So is it just sort of a correlate? Never any great studies that, hey, getting, the vitamin C or the vitamin D or these other things at any level, sort of from a prospective intervention made a difference.
Julie received COVID vaccine today. Had been a year. I'm 68. Will there be an update?
Well, so the one you got today is probably the updated one, I'm thinking. Actually, no, it's not, right? Because the new ones are coming out in August, September. So that's the one from before. Yep.
What is the new one going to be? JN1 or is that the previous one?
So they've given them a choice, right? So, you could stick with the JN1 or you can go with the updated. So.
What would you do?
I'm not really sure it matters that much, and I would love if, they're demanding data, like, let's finally ask that question. Does it really matter? Let's do a prospective study. If you keep saying you have to update it, then let's see the data. Let's head to head.
Yeah. We've been talking about that for years. Ariozone asks, I'm curious if you or your colleagues are increasingly using AI in your practices. Well, Daniel is an AI. It's not really him.
So, I'm not, but I do notice, I've been rounding, like I'm rounding in the ICU and I'll kind of start talking about something and, and they're like, oh, AI agrees with you, Dr. So, it's being studied and particularly being studied in, well, in infectious disease, as I would say particularly, that's what I'm paying attention to. So paying attention to the fact that it's being studied, and they've looked at it in a bunch of different ways. So one is, it's the middle of the night, you get a positive blood culture, and you ask AI, hey, what do I do? Instead of waking up the infectious disease doctor. And I like the idea, but it's basically mediocre. It's like calling a bad ID doc in the middle of the night, or maybe someone that, like, I don't know, when you wake them up, gives you bad advice because it's the time of the day. They forget about site control. It's just sort of, it's regressive, right? So it's sort of, if you've gotten bad advice in the past and you start using it, you're going to keep getting bad advice. Ideally, you don't just call the person you're supposed to call. You pay attention to who's been giving you good advice. And it's not really, sort of at that level. But boy, they're trying to get it to that level.
Interesting. I don't think that's what it's meant to be used for.
One thing they're using it for is charting, right? So they've got this system, and we demoed it. And now I'm realizing, like, what the point was. So while you're with the patient, the AI is listening. And then it's writing a note for you, and it's helping you do some of the tasks. So, there's a part of the interaction that's just sort of chit chat, like, hey, Vincent, I see you wearing a black shirt again, but, not a turtleneck. And, AI might decide that's useless. But I might be asking those questions because I think I'm, going to get something there. I might ask, the question about the cat. I might ask, like, where were you born, and do you have any pets? And AI might think I'm chit chatting, but I need to know this stuff, or I want to know this stuff. And also there's a part of it is you're developing a connection with the patient. You're like, hey, I'm an O'Connell, I have firefighters in the family, whatever. It helps there. But what they're also doing is, as mentioned, is the administrators are using this to keep track of how much each particular provider spends, quote unquote, on task doing their job versus just chatting. And then when you say, like, I can't see 8 people per hour, they say, well, you probably could if there wasn't so much chit chat, because this AI analysis, and they are doing this already, doing AI analysis, and you're too chit chatty with your patients. You need to stop that and see more patients and chit chat less.
Kip, thank you for your support of science communication. UCLA losing $1 to $2 billion in research funding is atrocious. We are forced to live in the consciousness of another person, our great leader. Yes. Markle writes, the mRNA vaccine, I believe, has had clinical tests for some cancers before the COVID vaccine was developed. Is it currently used for any cancers?
Yeah, so it's sort of an interesting history of the mRNA vaccines. And I was involved in some legal stuff going on. Sort of, there was a period of time when that was really felt to be, where the money was, where the efficacy, where the impact. So mRNA technology, not for infectious disease, not for vaccines, but to try to go after, vaccines for cancer. So there really is a lot of excitement there. And I wonder if this broad, sort of sweep of cutting funding is going to go after that. But yeah, let me look this up, because I think there is mRNA cancer vaccine. Because I think there is an mRNA cancer vaccine, actually. Yeah, I want to say there's a mRNA prostate cancer vaccine. Let me see if I can find this while we're chatting. Yeah, if anyone knows that or wants to do some real-time Googling, but I do believe that was actually one of the first ones going back.
So Tom recalls those wonderful microbe TV sessions on vaccines 2020-21. We covered everything. We covered phase 1, the phase 2, the phase 3, everything for both Pfizer and Moderna. Both Daniel, that's in the beginning when Daniel used to be part of the original TWIV, right? We do 3-hour shows.
Oh, they were so long.
Until we split it off, yeah. But it was fun because we could have your input on everything too. Actually, you just stayed for your own part. Okay, Doreen wants to know, do you think we'll lose wastewater surveillance? Is it state funded? Do federal entities consolidate it? Can we still trust it?
So this is the biggest concern. Like, are we still going to get the data? I mean, the CDC doesn't just give recommendation. They're big part of what they do is collect data, collect information, and the best way for a disease to go away is to stop looking for it. Now, I was in Tanzania last December, hanging out with the Maasai and some of the other groups in the area, and I remember talking to some individuals at a large Western-funded hospital, and what they were saying is there was a certain date when they were told there will be no more COVID testing. You know, if you report a COVID case, there will be consequences, basically. And they're like, so basically the next day we still had hypoxic people coming in, getting really sick. We still had all these people dying, but it was not COVID. And if you recorded anywhere that it was, you were going to be in big trouble. And so, you know, so many people say, "Oh, why was COVID so mild in Africa?" It's like, well, and how did they suddenly in Tanzania have no more COVID after a certain day? You have an authoritarian government that basically says, "Here's the deal," and they start controlling the data. And what do you do? And that's really going to be a problem here.
Truth or Dare asks, should my 75-year-old friend with ME/CFS, 40 years old, wear an elastomeric respirator on her 10-hour US-UK flight? Should she get Pemgarda? She hopes for Novavax in late fall.
Okay, so this is certainly a challenge, right? So yeah, you're flying, you're on a plane. We do know that's a fairly risk associated activity. It's 10 hours, right? You don't have to have it on the entire time, right? Because at some point you're going to want to eat or drink. So, but it's not like it's a binary, like, oh my gosh, I took it off to eat something or to have something to drink. And now it was a waste. It's not actually true. It's whatever you're wearing it, you're minimizing. I don't know if everyone in my family still does this, but I know when I travel with my daughter, Daisy, both of us are wearing our proper masks. I don't know if it needs to be an elastomeric respirator, right? It could be, an N95. You sort of, making a decision about what you're comfortable doing. Pemgarda, right? I don't think you're going to meet criteria for Pemgarda with ME/CFS, unfortunately. But Pemgarda has some really excellent data. It needs every 3 months. And then, Novavax should be available in late fall, 75 years old. So you're going to be good to go.
Do you wear the mask the whole trip, Daniel, the whole flight?
I'll take it off to like eat or drink, but I'll wear it to sleep and things like that.
Carol writes, Dr. Griffin, thank you for vaccine recommendations for my pregnant daughter-in-law, who is now in her third trimester. She was able to receive Tdap, RSV, COVID, and flu, all covered by her insurance.
Excellent.
Thank you, John, for your support of science communication. Welcome, Dr. Griffin. Have you heard of any new textbook on parasitic diseases? And if they have any dedications to notable people this audience is familiar with? That's an easy one. It's a softball.
Yeah, John, there's a brand new 8th edition of parasitic diseases now entitled Despommiers Parasitic Diseases. We've given the printer the okay to print the first 500 copies. It's available on Amazon for purchase. It's also, you can download it for free from parasiteswithoutborders.com.
Melinda writes, Daniel, do you have any treatments you use for long COVID? Are they symptom management or actually helping the patients get better?
Yeah, so Melinda, I think it's been about a year now, right? Because I presented this data at the Maine Medical Association as their keynote speaker last September. So last summer, I did publish a paper, and it went through, how to make the diagnosis, what objective either physiological or biochemical abnormalities you could document, though those are not required, and actually went through a number of the treatments. Now, Lawrence Perper, who runs our Columbia Long COVID Clinic, he and I have been talking quite a bit about different therapies. And depending upon the person, there do seem to be some therapies that are making a difference. So, for instance, a subset of patients will develop an autonomic dysfunction phenotype. And so, sometimes we're doing things there where we're trying to, either help with vagal tone through active breathing, or even these ice baths that we're doing, or even ice on the face. There's a study where we're getting ready to fire up using stellate ganglion blocks, so kind of the other side, shutting down the sympathetic, and some good case reports that have led to the funding for that research. Really a number. So, what's the best thing to do? There are a number of these long COVID clinics. I have a lot of confidence in Lawrence Perper and the team at Columbia. Fortunately, there's a huge waiting list, which just lets you know how many people are impacted by this. But no, there are actual treatments out there that are evidence-based, and probably the biggest thing, right, is preventing people from getting this. So we're going to be talking about a paper tomorrow about, finally a really good meta-analysis on all the data about how vaccination, and early antivirals, how these different things can reduce your risk of getting either long COVID or post-COVID syndrome.
We have 191 people and only 87 likes. Please hit the like button, folks, so people can discover this. Doug writes, Moderna's mRNA 1010 flu vaccine is in phase 3 trials. Okay.
Yeah, I wonder if that'll be impacted by the HHS decisions.
Noir, thank you for your support of science communication. You're the best, Dr. G.
Hey, Noir.
Red Hen is currently in the combo flu COVID mRNA vaccine trial through Pfizer. Cool.
Exciting.
David writes, I'm not seeing availability anywhere for Novavax. Not sure if it's available yet or not.
Yeah, so David, it won't be available until August, September. So, we're just barely into August. So, give it a couple weeks. We should. If someone wants to find out an exact date, maybe we can find out from Novavax what day it'll be available.
Mark writes, Legionella killed my brother. No idea how. We were guessing he wasn't cleaning his CPAP machine properly.
Yeah, that can do it again. That same issue. You start to get the paramecium, the amoeba, and then they're infected with the Legionella, and then you breathe it in like under that high pressure. So sorry to hear.
Charles writes, hello from Lyndhurst, a longtime listener from way back during the Dr. G's Stairwell podcasts. I'd taken a tip from someone, perhaps a mod or a fan of TWIV. That's cool. Yeah, those are the old days.
Yeah, right. No, I remember that. Oh my gosh.
Leo writes, TV doctor here. I was the COVID rat inspector at a retreat with over 150 people here in Northern California. No positive results. Was this a lucky anomaly?
Oh, no.
I don't know, Leo. It's hard to say, right?
Yeah, I don't know.
Truth or Dare wants to know, is it okay to get current Moderna shot plus Prevnar together, or better to get Prevnar later and combine Moderna and RSV together, planning on Novavax 2 months after Moderna?
So let's see here. Is it okay to get current Moderna shot and Prevnar together? Okay, so the first thing is that's absolutely fine. Like if that's just looking in isolation, current Moderna shot, Prevnar is fine. It's recommended. It's now down to, I think, age 50. But now the second question, is it better to get Prevnar later and then combine Moderna and RSV together? I mean, there really isn't going to be an issue that I'm aware of. There are some studies. Is it better to get two at the same time? Nothing I'd say that's really horribly compelling here. I mean, the big thing is to get vaccinated, right? So great to get the Prevnar, great to get the COVID shot, great to get that RSV protection. So you're 72. I think the RSV may have, they may have bumped that to 75 unless you have some medical condition that would make you eligible.
F. Yang wants to know, are tubings common paths for bacterial infection? I remember in undergrad reading a case report of a woman dying of antibiotic-resistant bacteria going up a catheter.
So unfortunately, people that have indwelling catheters can get colonized, right? You've got a urinary catheter. It goes in. It's to the outside world, bacteria, and the bladder is not a sterile place. Certainly not a sterile place when you have a catheter in place. So you start having bacteria there, and a lot of times people will periodically test. They'll say, "Oh my gosh, this is this abnormal UA, a positive UA." People use that terminology. Not sure exactly what that means, but maybe there's white cells and some inflammation, which sure is going to happen when you have foreign material. And then they'll look for bacteria. And yes, again, you're going to have bacteria. You can have greater than 100 colony forming units per ml. That's just the deal. But this asymptomatic bacteria is not necessarily an infection. But doctors just can't help themselves. So they start throwing antibiotics, and you actually start selecting. So now you've got a biofilm, you've selected for multi-drug resistant pathogens, and now the person gets an infection and you can't treat it.
Noir asks, how does B cell CLL affect B1 cells?
Yes, so there's a lot of interesting ideas, and I published a paper with Conti Rai and others about the potential relationship between B1 cells as maybe the precursor of CLL cells.
Lori writes, local pharmacies recommending getting COVID and the flu vaccines 4 weeks apart. Is the 4 weeks based on data?
There's just go ahead, get them. You don't need to separate them.
Yeah, last time I had RSV, flu, and COVID all at once, 3 times, 3 vaccines.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, I mean, early on we were separating because we were going to try to understand side effects and the rest, and we didn't. If you had a bad reaction, was it the flu shot? Was it the COVID shot? Was it something else? Yeah, I think we've gotten that information at this point. So,
cat eaten by another bigger cat. Yep, that's cat life.
Never really thought of it that way. Yes.
Bobcats also kill house cats. Thomas writes, do COVID vaccines reduce my chance of getting myocarditis? I just got my 7th booster last week. My cousin has long COVID and myocarditis.
That's a great question, Thomas. Yes. COVID vaccines. Like we have circulating SARS-CoV-2. People keep getting COVID. Your chance of getting myocarditis, pericarditis, all this sort of inflammation involving the heart and surrounding the heart is, I think it's like 7 to 11 times, sort of depending on the study, higher if you're not protected by the vaccine. So the vaccine reduces your chance. We talked about the peak where we were seeing it. We saw that peak really in younger males when they were getting it, only 3 to 4 weeks apart. Now that we spaced it out, now that we're in boosters, we're really not seeing it from the vaccine. It's interesting because Vinay Prasad actually made that comment. He's like, we're not really seeing it anymore, but still, And so, yeah, it is the best way to prevent myocarditis is to get a yearly COVID shot.
Dave wants to know how you did in your sailboat race a few weeks ago.
So we did really well, actually. It was thanks for asking, Dave. I'll give you the blow by blow. So we, as I mentioned, it convinced the mother of one of the kids that I've been teaching to sail to do it in her boat, and she got all excited about it. She got first place for new time skipper in the race. We got second place in our division by only something like 18 minutes in a 39-hour race. So it was a great race. Nice. It was very exciting.
JJ writes, French researchers recently recovered infectious SARS-CoV-2 from the brainstem of otherwise healthy golden hamsters at 80 days post-infection. Is respiratory virus persistence common?
So I don't think replication competence, viral persistence is a common phenomenon. I don't know, Vincent, do you have any comments?
I don't think it is. No, I mean, I hear, and I haven't looked at this study, but I just wonder how much, was it a few infectious particles or was it a lot? Was it replicating or just sitting there? So we know that RNA can persist, right? But not necessarily infectious virus. Now, they better not have done PCR and called it infectious virus. I know some people want to do that, right?
Yeah, sometimes, and they do special PCR and say, oh, because the special PCR, you'd only see these. Yeah, you got to actually do the plaque assays. You got to see the virus replicate.
Otto Batodogo writes, what is the immunological reason that IVIG as measles PEPs needs to be within 6 days if the incubation is longer than that? Incubation has progressed too far to be effective?
So let's see. What's immunology? Is measles. So there's a couple approaches here. So a lot of times when someone gets an infection, we'll actually jump in with vaccine, right? So rabies, for instance, is an example of that. Maybe with measles, we'll jump in with vaccine. So a lot of times that 6-7 days isn't really related to the incubation of the virus, but it's related to the impact of the vaccine.
John wants to know if we are in peak tick season. Any PSA bullet point reminder from your point of view for listeners? We just had a
John,
tick twip, right?
So we are in peak tick season, and we are seeing lots of tick-borne illnesses. There's like a 15% rise in babesiosis, like year by year. We're seeing an increase in Lyme, so Borrelia burgdorferi. We're seeing more Ehrlichia, Anaplasma. We're actually seeing more of the alpha gal, right? That was a recent educational article because people seem not to really, understand and how to test for that and how to recognize it. It reminds me actually of one of the recent twins, right? Where, how do you draw the connection between I don't feel well and it was that thing I ate, right? Because there can be like a gap, right? If that gap's more than 30 minutes, who knows?
Yeah, that's true. If you have multiple meals, you don't know, right?
Yeah. So the big thing, like we did a TWIP recently where it was a bunch of people who had ticks, and you'll love this. I am then sitting on the couch with our 3 dogs, and I feel something on my arm, and you know what it was? It was a tick. It's a tick. So yeah, we have tons of ticks. So you got to treat your dogs. You got to check your dogs. You got to check yourself. Yeah.
MN, thank you for your support of science communication. Thank you for the IRL science. You're welcome. Truth or Dare writes, Daniel, I have many young, healthy friends who had chikungunya during the 2014-15 Oceania triple epidemic of chick, Zika, and dengue. Hickham's dictum was at work. Many rebounds of chick and long chick.
Yeah, during that 2014, 2015, there was actually a doctor in Seattle who had been over there. Yeah, it ended up, with a co-infection of chikungunya and I think he was chikungunya and dengue. I don't know if he was ever even tested for Zika, but yeah, he was one of those, 5% a year out was just still struggling with just horrible, debilitating arthritis involving his hands and other joints.
Melinda writes, 5 days of Paxlovid, I was migraine-free. I never have 5 migraine-free days. What could the mechanism be?
Wow. I don't know.
You ever heard that before?
No. No, we definitely see new onset migraines after COVID, but yeah, I've never heard that.
Sydney writes, my common cold rebounds often result in a sinus infection. Since COVID, I stay home a lot more and wear masks when I'm out. I've not had COVID at all, nor a cold in many years.
Yeah, I mean, that's classic, right? You get over whatever, and then you get the inflammation. Now your sinuses are not draining.
Vanity says, how do you think the upcoming school year will play out with measles?
Oh, Vanity, I'm worried about that, right? Because it really never settled down. We're still seeing. I was just looking at the numbers. We're still seeing more cases. Canada, it's a mess, like another 200 or 300 cases, over the last bit there. We're well into the records, and now we're going to bring all these kids together in the fall when we still have this ongoing transmission. It's in 41 jurisdictions now so far, so really in most of the country. And we're, as people may have noticed, we're seeing an increased rate in exemptions from vaccination. So yeah, there are certain parts of the country that are really, will it be this fall? Will it be next fall? It's really kind of a question of when, but we're really set up for this perfect storm.
Mark writes, is some of the data reported on news outlets about a 2,000% increase in HIV in Russian soldiers leading to multi-drug resistant TB. Is this accurate?
Yeah, I don't know. I am certainly very concerned about what's going on with HIV, right? We've talked about the impacts where, even though they said, oh, but the drugs are exempted, but the computers are shut down, so you don't know where they're supposed to go. And then everyone's afraid to bring them where they're supposed to go. So you've got all these pregnant women with HIV, having children with HIV because they don't have access to drugs. You have all these people who are no longer virally suppressed, sexually active. So it's just this is a disaster.
Rita writes, measles virus has been found in wastewater in northern Idaho. No cases reported yet. Idaho has the lowest child vaccine rate of all the states, and school starts soon.
Yeah, so Rita, this is really interesting. So you mentioned that no reported cases. So in Canada, they report confirmed and probable cases. In the US, we only report confirmed cases. So there's certain places like Idaho where they just won't test. So you're not going to get a measles case if you don't do the test. You're not going to get a measles case, even if several people are getting it, several people have characteristics. Idaho is an interesting place. I probably mentioned my first job, I was in Montana. But I trained out in Idaho, in Salt Lake City, and I was looking at jobs in Idaho. A lot of the communities in Idaho are Mormon communities, Latter-day Saint communities, and a lot of them, the way you apply for a job is to reach out to the local Latter-day Saint bishop and then sort of go through that route. So it's a different part of the world. It's a beautiful part of the world, but some different ideas about medicine and science.
Melinda writes, a vitamin D level of 50 makes you less likely to get COVID. Is that right, Daniel?
Melinda, you got to send me the link.
Yeah, send us the link. Is that why Tony Fauci took 50,000 units a week?
Remember, I always had it in the cabinet and I would just forget to take it.
Noir writes, my friend who is watching tonight has HTLV 1 and 2, and she would like just a little bit of information about what it is.
Yeah, so HTLV is something that we see in a few communities. So there's a couple pockets, right? So I think it's Jamaica. There's some populations in Peru, Okinawa, and Japan, and the virus. So this is sort of the original retrovirus, right? And people remember Gallo and the band Marched On, but this could be associated with different, because it's spastic paresis, tropical spastic paresis. Certain lymphomas can be associated. Yep. So if someone has this, Noir, if your friend has this, they should look for someone who has knowledge of the specialty. We have a little pocket here in Great Neck, and it's a Persian, it's an Iranian population that has it. It can be passed through breastfeeding and sexual means. So,
Steel Rabbit writes, if one is immune competent and up to date on vaccinations, what are the chances of getting long COVID after an infection that doesn't result in hospitalization?
Yeah, so we think it's down about 1% at this point. That's sort of what we're seeing.
Airy Ozone writes, from a certain perspective, the major nutrients depleted during upper respiratory infections are all replaced by drinking chicken soup. Better send Daniel the paper on that, okay?
Okay, that'd be awesome. Yeah, what do you do if it's avian flu? If you have avian flu, should you drink chicken soup? I'm not sure.
Chicken soup is good. F. Yang writes, I haven't paid attention recently. Should I get another COVID vaccine? As a healthy 27-year-old, I've had 7 total doses, but haven't gotten more for 2 years.
Yeah, so we do recommend it. Why do we recommend it? For a couple things. So one is, I mentioned them just right before. What's your chance of long COVID? It's probably about 1%. Vaccines are the best way to prevent long COVID, so ongoing issues after the infection. 27-year-old healthy, probably not going to end up in the hospital, but you might end up at an urgent care. You might end up at an ER. You might feel crummy for a number of days. And the booster, reduces the severity. So you may still get COVID, but you might have a milder case. Also, maybe you'll not spread it to other folks.
So Vanity, who is a flight attendant, says she sees about 5% mask wearing on her flight. So one of those is you, Daniel.
Yes. And if you see like a little blonde girl about 25 years old, that's my daughter.
Rob, thank you for your support of science communication. What does this mean? Why is a funguses? I don't know what you mean by that, Rob.
I don't know. Let us know, Rob.
Visto writes, AI can read all that is ever recorded about a patient. Humans cannot even read the allergies printed bold on the chart.
Visto, you're right.
Doreen writes, Dr. G, is AI worse than some of these docs you read about who are still prescribing steroids and hydroxychloroquine for COVID?
You know, AI might be better than those doctors. Oh my gosh. Yeah, good point, Doreen.
Mara writes, Dr. Griffin, you are the best listener I have ever met.
Better than AI Noir? I think that's what the challenge is.
Melinda writes, human connection supports healing. I would believe that, right, Daniel?
No, I think that's a lot of what is sort of lost when AI is analyzing. Oh, you're chit chatting too much. There's a lot to be said for just someone who actually listens, not only listens but actually cares and has a genuine interest and makes that connection. So, yeah, it's not all about quantifying all these variables.
Noir writes that part of your brilliance is that you listen to your patients so carefully. And Melinda writes, some people won't tell you what's wrong if you don't talk long enough. Right, Dan? You probably are familiar with that, right?
I think that's key. I mean, I always go in the room, and I guess Noir can comment on this, and I pull up a chair and I take a seat and I just sort of wait, like, what do I need to know? And I think it allows me to do my job better. I mean, you got to listen. Say, oh, do you want a brilliant surgeon, as a great surgical technique, or you want someone with good bedside manner? I'm like, yeah, I don't want a great surgeon because who knows what he's going to operate on.
Noir writes, I was in the ICU for a week in 21 and no one could visit due to COVID restrictions. Listening to TWIV saved my sanity. Great to hear it. Mark writes, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration has granted first approval of an Epstein-Barr virus-related mRNA therapeutic cancer vaccine. Oh, there you awesome. Go. That's what you were probably thinking about, Daniel, right?
Yep.
John wants to know, what is your next planned sortie out of the country?
Yeah, so John, I'm not sure where I'm headed next. At some point, I got to get over to Denmark, that whole sailboat thing. But yeah, Christina was trying to schedule time for me to do the University of Glasgow diploma in tropical medicine in December. I'm like, I usually spend most of December in Uganda. My daughter Daisy has spent the last month in Panama. She's trying to get me down. I really wanted to go this week because they went by boat and then they went up in the mountains like 4 hours with horses and they're in this remote village for a week. And I'm incredibly jealous. I would like to be there, but one of my partners is on vacation in Norway and I do have to, cover for my partners. So they'll cover for me when I'm off on these journeys.
Doreen, thank you for your support of science communication. Thank you for the science, the hope for the future. Now, Kang writes, do insurance companies follow the rule that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure and will disregard this administration's vaccination recommendations?
So, Kang, it's really an interesting situation that these insurance companies find themselves in, right? So, they really try to do as much as they can to encourage people to get vaccinated. But then they're in this weird situation where they're careful not to upset people by saying things publicly or having their doctors say publicly. I ran into that issue that people may have heard about where I was so our multi-specialty group was acquired by Optum, which is below United Health Group. And then I basically got that whole I would talk and say no, vaccines are really important and hey, it's a problem when an older person gets sick. And they're like, "Oh, you can't say that stuff, Dr. Griffin. You have to be properly socialized to our corporate messaging." And I'm like, guys, you're going to be in a lot of trouble if you collect these premiums, but then you don't keep your patients healthy by, advancing good education about, this prevention. You're going to be stuck with this huge bill when everyone ends up in the hospital. And it would really help their bottom line by getting people to get flu shots and keeping people from having the post-influenza myocardial infarctions and ending up in the hospital and needing bypasses and all these other interventions. So yeah, those insurance companies are sort of in a weird place as they try to somehow negotiate this political landscape, when what they really want to do is actually the right thing, which is prevention, keeping people out of the hospital. That actually saves them money. There's an incentive for these sort of capitalist mercenary organizations.
Roberta wants to know if she's a splenic and diabetic, is that person eligible for PEMGARDA?
I think the asplenic would actually put you into the immunocompromised, because they talk about significant immunocompromise. So have your doctor look at the exact FDA approval and see if that lack of a spleen sort of checks the right box on the immune compromise.
All right. I'm just looking for one or two more here because I know we're over time. Aubrey asks Dr. Griffin, as we may not be able to rely on governmental surveillance, what other reliable sources of infectious disease surveillance information are there?
No, Aubrey, it's gonna be tough. I tried at one point when I was still associated with UHG to have them set up a national wastewater surveillance, and we were sort of trying to sell them on the idea that this is going to help them. It's going to help them know, alert doctors when to do certain diagnostic testing, maybe help them keep ahead of things. The whole idea that it would be in their best interest financially. But no, we really rely on a lot of governmental surveillance. So we're gonna be in a tough spot unless other people are gonna step up, fill that void.
YouTube writes, RFK Jr. mentioned antigenic shift in which mRNA vaccines prolong pandemics. Is that a lie?
Yes. Yeah. How do you know if RFK Jr. is lying? Just his lips are moving.
His lips are moving. That's good. Eto writes, my cardiologist wants me to take the updated shingles shot to avoid possible heart issues with shingles. Is this a thing? I had the original a few years back.
Yeah, we actually we talked about a paper that getting the shingles actually reduces your risk of a major cardiovascular incident. So yeah.
Lori says, if you've had Prevnar 20, is it safe to get Prevnar 21?
Yeah, it's interesting. So it's not like 21 has one extra than 20. There's actually a slight little difference in the mix. I mean, right now we recommend one or the other. But, is there really a problem if you got one and the other? Who knows?
All right, last one. I promised Daniel 1 hour. Patricia writes, recently Megastar concierge docs Tia's guest in discussing the aging immune system let loose that vaccines are almost useless for those over 70. Is that true, Daniel? Almost useless.
So no, which is kind of crazy, right? We have lots of data on all these vaccines where they actually look at folks over 70, right? I mean, the RSV, great data over 75, right? We have the flu vaccine, great data over 70. We have the COVID vaccine. We look at all these different vaccines, and people just say stuff.
All right, one more. Is it possible people who got myocarditis from the mRNA vaccine would have also gotten it if they'd gotten SARS-CoV-2?
Yes, that's what we've all, it's hard to do this, right? Because how do you do the same, in the same person, right? But that's one of the thoughts, is that it may be that the people that got myocarditis associated with the mRNA vaccine were the people that would have gotten it from a SARS-CoV-2 infection, but not really something that we can sort out.
All right, this is really the last one. Do most physicians take a dedicated virology course, or is it part of a microbiology course?
Unfortunately, the latter. Yeah.
Daniel, when I first went to Columbia in 1982, I used to teach medical students. I gave them 7 lectures on different viruses. Now I give them one on COVID.
Yeah. It's really crazy. I mean, it's tough, and I understand. I mean, there's so much to learn, and there's only so much time that people are willing to sort of put in before they're out there taking care of patients. But it's a challenge because we know so much more than we used to know, and how do you cram that into, well, now what, 2 years before you're on the wards?
Hmm. Everybody, thank Dr. Daniel Griffin for coming on tonight. Daniel, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. See you tomorrow.
Oh, thank you. No, thank everyone for coming, and everyone be safe.
Bye-bye. Okay, folks, there you go. Not bad. We got through most of the questions. I'm going to go on for a little bit more if you don't mind. I like to talk. Veronika, Privyet from Moscow, where it's a warm 19. Got my thumb bitten by my kitty at the vet. Sorry about that. Yeah, you could get some very nasty infections. I've seen that happen. Mm-hmm. So apparently Noir quoted Ice Cube. So let's hear. Let me go back. And I just passed over it because I actually didn't know. Here we go. Noir, check yourself before you wreck yourself. Ice Cube. Nice rhyming. Visto, about tick removal. These are all for Daniel, okay? So I'm not going to answer the ones that require a medical degree. But would chicken pecking be a safe tick removal? I don't know. The chick may cause more damage than your little set of tweezers would cause. So I wouldn't do that. But maybe other people have more experience. I just used to use tweezers. Would eating infected ticks be bad for birds? The digestive tract is always moving. And I don't know if the tick would be able to get a foothold, so to speak. It's funny. Yeah. Can COVID mRNA vaccines be used for cats and dogs? I don't know. Anybody know? Let us write it in the comments, right? Ice Cube. Are the questions just asked in chat? Yes. There's nowhere else to submit them. Right here, down below, to the right of the video. I don't know, on your phone, it's probably somewhere else. Yeah, but you can always email them if you want Daniel to answer them. Daniel at microbe.tv. Oh, yes, Vanity. I heard him talk about Montana, and I thought about you. Yes. I did never get to that. I'm sorry about that. Patricia writes, Paul Offit says the vitamin D range is not a real thing, kind of made up. I'm interested in that, but I take vitamin D and find I always do better when I do take it. So after the winter months, my vitamin D was very low. So I started supplementing. I'm still taking it, even though I get 10 minutes of sun a day. Yeah, that's all I get. My walk from Penn Station to the incubator. But I feel like I have more energy, right? But that's anecdotal, right? Doesn't mean anything. I doubt this is the primary study, but I found a link. You could send it to Daniel at microbe.tv, Melinda, and he'll take a look at that. Les writes, vitamin D is only important if you have a deficiency. Mega doses have no advantage. There were studies. So when I was tested and had low vitamin D, my doc gave me 7 gel caps of vitamin D, 50,000 units each. I took the first one and I had horrible side effects. So I stopped it and I got lower dose, and I'm okay with that daily. So, but I had a deficiency. Now, I don't know if it's corrected. I probably isn't, because I don't get out in the sun, right? Yeah, so if you email the question tonight or tomorrow morning, so tomorrow I am going to collate the questions for the clinical update, which is recorded at 5 p.m. Eastern on Thursdays. So you could send a question to Daniel@microbe.tv. Vanity says, I once heard it's the selenium in the chicken noodle soup that helps the immune system. I think this is a very difficult question to address. There are too many confounding factors. And I don't know that you can do a proper clinical study. You certainly can't do a placebo-controlled clinical study, right? What are you going to have? People who eat chicken soup for 6 months and some that don't, how often they're going to eat it, what kind, who's going to make it, your mother, your grandmother, get it out of a can, all these variables. No, nobody's going to do that. And yeah, here's one from Veronica for Dr. Griffin. So I'm not going to answer that. This is a good question. What do you do if you can't find a science-following doctor? All the local docs seem to receive the same poor guidance. Well, you could ask Daniel Griffin. He's got a big network of physicians who kind of report to him. So he might be able to do that. I advise you, that is. Sylvia Pina, thank you for your contribution to science communication. Just stopping by to support the incubator and science. Grazie, Vincent. Daniel Griffin, immense gratitude for your work. Y'all keep up the fight. Dr. J, this is a good question. After the current administration, and particularly RFK Jr., guts medical research, and in particular vaccinology, how will American medicine ever recover or be destined to the dustbin of history? I don't think it's going to be destined to the dustbin of history, but if we get rid of all these bozos tomorrow, it would still take a year to recover everything that's been trashed, okay? So it is all recoverable. We know how to do it right, and it's just a matter of getting them out of here. But, if they play games like redistrict in Texas, we're never going to get out of this, right? This is just improper. But apparently, gerrymandering is okay. The Supreme Court says so. But they're really scared to lose the House. And I haven't had chicken soup in years. I really don't like it. But your mileage may vary. It's Prevnar 13. So you should ask other people. But someone was asking about Prevnar 21, right? I believe I got that recently. And my doc says you'll never need another one. Okay, Charlotte, so Daniel covered this earlier, right? The Novavax is going to be available end of August, I think he said, or early fall. Yeah. Craig writes, the problem is when the cost of the pound of cure comes from a different pocket from the ounce of prevention. That's all true. Yes. Vanity writes, chickens raised in the U.S. aren't given added hormones for now anyway. This was outlawed in the 50s. Other things like antibiotics are another story. John, I'm probably too late to ask if the new textbook cover has a silhouette of a certain parasite starting with S and ending in soma, but I have the feeling I'll find out on the next TWIP. Yeah, the next TWIP should be coming out, I think, Friday, if I'm not mistaken. It's edited. It's ready to go. And, yeah, you're right. You're right, John. You got it right. Yeah, Daniel came before we went live, and he said, I'm giving you 1 hour, okay? So I respect that, because usually he doesn't say that. And sometimes I've kept him an hour and a half, but he didn't want to, so It's fine. Busy guy. Listen to Clinical Update. It's really good. Well, this is we talk a lot about this question on Clinical Update. Which COVID booster do you recommend, Novavax or Moderna? Well, I got Pfizer Moderna. I got 3 shots. No side effects whatsoever. No soreness, nothing. So it depends. If you had poor reactions to mRNA vaccines, you don't want to have them again, you get a Novavax. Many people report far fewer side effects. Yeah. Yep. Everybody's thanking Dr. Griffin. It was November since he was here, so we'll get him in another 6 months. This is a good question. Do you think long-acting preventive antivirals similar to lenacapavir for HIV might be possible for flu, SARS-CoV-2, etc.? It's a matter of a bit of luck. So lenacapavir, right, is a total game changer. It hits multiple. We're going to talk about this TWIV on Friday. Okay, we're going to do a lenacapavir discussion. It hits multiple steps in the viral life cycle, so very potent. And you only need 2 shots a year. It's so pharmacologically stable that, and in the 2 clinical trials, it was 100% prevention of AIDS. So that's amazing. And as far as I can tell, it was lucky that it ended up this way. So it's the only inhibitor that hits the capsid. Can you do it for other viruses? Sure. Why not? The problem is that pharmaceutical companies are not going to do that. It's too risky. And, research is getting curtailed in this country. So maybe someone else in another country will do it. But I don't see why you couldn't do it with other viruses. Yeah. Yeah. It's a good question. March 716's neighbor has chickens and they wander around eating ticks. Melinda writes, unfortunately, all COVID vaccines use spike protein. I wish they would design them with a different protein. The spike is the way to go, but you could modify it so you have, I don't know what the problem is. The problem, in my opinion, is antigenic variation and immune evasion. But you can design new antigens that could potentially avoid that, right? But it's not clear that, say, nuclear protein, which is the most abundant protein in the virus-infected cell, has lots of T-cell epitopes. It's not clear how effective that would be, and I'm not sure that we can do, at least in the U.S., a clinical trial with that kind of vaccines. It's a very interesting question. Noir writes, we use remdesivir on cats, right? Right. Dr. Sehult at MedCram emphasizes light exposure over D supplements. Yeah, it's fine, but okay, how long do you have to sit in the sun? Let's say, or maybe you could use a lamp, I guess. I don't know. But I'm not going to go outside for an hour every day. I have stuff to do inside. And I'm at the incubator all day. There's nowhere to sit anymore in New York City. They took all the benches away so homeless people won't sleep on them. So I can't even go outside onto a bench with my laptop and sit in the sun. So I realize these are first world problems, but a pill is very useful, helpful. Sunlight, vitamin D lasts longer. I don't know. I don't know about that. Yeah, sun gives you melanoma too. Well, you can put sunscreen on, right? Hmm. Very Nika writes, this is not science, but I want to read it. My brain just breaks when I try to understand America gerrymandering. Yeah, I agree with you. It's ridiculous. And the Electoral College is another one. But other countries do dumb things too, okay? Not that that's a justification, but uh, you know what I'm talking about. I think they should just draw squares or rectangles randomly, right? If you have a state that's really densely populated, just make a bunch of squares or rectangles. Have AI do it. Hmm. Tia is grateful for working scientists and others communicating how science operates and keeping us up to date. We try. It's very hard to get working scientists to communicate because they're working. I did both from 2008 to 2023, 22, and I decided it was very hard to do, at least at the level that I was doing it. Yeah. Kang writes is great. When asked the question if eating polar bear liver is toxic because of high vitamin A levels, a magazine for hunters answered yes, especially when the polar bear is still alive. Yeah, try getting a liver of a live polar bear, right? That's great. Thank you, mods, for cleaning out the trash. Yeah, there was a bunch of stuff today that needed to be cleaned out. We don't need to point out what it is because that's the whole point, right? Yeah, so this is the problem with lenacapavir. I think it's $28,000 a year, and WHO is like, um, how can you do that? Most of the people in the world who need this can't afford it. I mean, and they did a study showing that you could sell it for $40 at the costs of scaling. So, what is it? AstraZeneca or Gilead? Sorry, Gilead. Why are they charging $28,000 for a year's treatment? Especially since the target audience is, low income. It's a real issue, right? Any thoughts on Airborne? I haven't read it. I don't like the name Airborne. It's kind of like tapping into the controversy over different kinds of droplet transmission. All right, let's talk about melanoma. This podcast will kill you. Did an interview about that book. We've had him on a couple of times also. Scott writes, any big tick will get crushed in a chicken's crop where they keep little pebbles for grinding. Yeah, I wouldn't have thought of that. It's right. The crop. Tom writes, my impression is that lenacapavir is excellent for prophylactic use, but has a relatively low barrier to resistance. That's true. It's only recommended for people who test negative. That's correct. To prevent infection. If you're already infected, not going to get it. So if you're already infected, you take a triple therapy, which works. Unfortunately, you have to take it the rest of your life, right? Something like 20 minutes a day in midday is a good start. Yeah, I've tried to walk 20, 30 minutes a day, 3 times a week. Um, the only issue will be in the winter when there's no sun, right? Then maybe you have to take supplements. I don't know. You don't get vitamin D from the sun if you have on sunscreen. Is that true? Well, then you're going to get skin cancer. And I'd rather take a pill than get cancer, a vitamin D pill. Yes, remdesivir is a broad spectrum antiviral against minus and plus RNA viruses, but only licensed right in the US for SARS-CoV-2. And I don't think it's as very effective against the other viruses, not enough to be licensed. Well, also, there was no clinical trial done for most of those viruses, right? All countries do stupid stuff. That's right. All countries. None of them are perfect. And we have our own problems, and other countries have their own problems too. I wish we could just work together and solve them, right? But no. Spamlet, you want me to talk to JoJo from Jersey? So I'm getting mixed reactions about this, okay? About talking to her. Some people, don't think it would be worthwhile. Tia, that's why emeritus people are so important. Yeah. But I don't see them doing anything. I'm not emeritus, by the way. I'm still professor, but I don't see emeritus people communicating very much. A lot of talk on sun and cancer and vitamin D, which I don't know anything about. Jeff writes, your gerrymandering fix, squares or rectangles, is the least size algorithm. No human should be involved in mapping districts. Only the algorithm using population is the only criteria. Yeah, it's the way it should be done. But it will never happen because the people in control now will not let it happen. Right? It has to happen during a democratic administration where they have control of Congress. How expensive is exponential transmission? I don't know what you mean. Obviously, if there's a pandemic, then exponential transmission is a real problem because a lot of people get sick, right? A lot of vitamin D in sunlight. Sally writes, this is a good point to talk about because we didn't do any news today. I was late, so I'm not sure whether you saw that the federal courts found that withholding the NIH research funding is illegal. Yes, I did see that. But of course, their tactic is just to appeal and appeal until they get to their friendly Supreme Court. And who knows what's going to happen there. And in the meantime, nobody's getting money. It's a real problem. So, of course, it's illegal. Congress mandated that funding, right? And now the president will argue that it's some kind of emergency, so he has the right to do it. But this is nonsense. There's no emergency. So I'm not sure that it's going to work. I mean, it may take a year to work. Who knows? Secondly, you may have seen that a congressional committee told Trump, no, we are not cutting the NIH budget like 40%. We're going to give it a 1% increase. We're for science research. So this bipartisan committee voted that the budget would not be slashed. Okay. Now that has to go to the House, then it has to go to the Senate, and then he has to sign it. What's the likelihood that he's going to sign a bill keeping money in NIH? Not going to happen. I mean, I would love it to happen, obviously, but I don't see it happening. Thank you for mentioning that. That's a really good point. Jason writes, when a new variant of COVID, like viral pandemic, happens, how quickly will rapid tests become available? All right, so let's say, so the next pandemic will probably be an influenza virus, I'm guessing. These coronavirus pandemics, well, this is the only one we know about, SARS-CoV-2, right? Pandemic. SARS-1 was not a pandemic. It's very rare. And it took a long time to develop rapid antigen tests. That the PCRs ruled for a couple of years because you have to make the reagents and you have to validate them. So I'm not sure it'll be any quicker, but I think it still takes a year to get them out. Mm-hmm. Vitamin A, Mark writes, a vitamin A additive was removed from sunscreen for being carcinogenic. Would that be retinol? So some of the skincare products have retinol in them. You're not supposed to go out in the sun with that, right? Maybe that's what you're talking about. Yes, this is the real Krebs cycle that we revealed on TWIV. Learn it, forget it, learn it, forget it, learn it, forget it. Although I teach it every year now in my virology course, so I can't write it out for you, but as soon as I look at it, I know what's going on. Yeah. Tia writes, modern distribution of humans means we're no longer necessarily well adapted to our UV exposure based on our melanin. So what's wrong with a vitamin D pill? I don't think it's a problem. It may not be the best way to get vitamin D, right? Because when we were hunter-gatherers, we didn't have vitamin D pills. We got it from the sun. But now people's lifestyles make it hard for them to be in the sun. So you have a pill, and it's not going to hurt you as far as I understand, right? Hello, Dennis. Good to see you again, or good to hear from you. I didn't know that you were even listening to these. Dennis found TWIV during COVID and used to give me pointers on my video, and I always listened to him. And I think we got to the point where here and also at the incubator, our video was pretty good. If I remember, Dennis did TV productions, lighting or something like that. Thank you, Dennis. I appreciate it. And good to see you. Okay, you guys are all having discussions about sun and melanoma and vitamin D. That's fine. I don't know anything about any of it. What's the plan for fall vaccines? If you want to get a vaccine, you can get it now because, as Daniel said, it's not clear that there is any difference in this or the next variant that the vaccine will have. So it's up to you. I won't be getting a vaccine, a COVID vaccine. I haven't since the very beginning. I got 3 of the initial doses, and that's it. I got COVID once. I took Paxlovid, and if I get it again, I will take Paxlovid. I'm not convinced that you need matched boosters every year. Doreen agrees about holding up NIH funding. The current playbook is to openly break the law, hang it up in the courts while agency destruction proceeds. Yeah. I'm still not clear why they need to break science research and break funding to save kids' lives in different countries. I don't see why that's necessary. That's just bloody mean. Tona writes, I'm conditioned that when Miss Dr. Griffin says everyone needs to be safe, that we hear the closing music. It's weird that we miss the exit music. Yeah, sorry. And I keep on yapping. But I like to read your questions. Tiga. I'm about 3 months out of a shingles bout. Oh, this would be a great one for Daniel. I'm only 39. My doctor says I can't get the vaccine because I'm not 50. So I don't know what Daniel would say, but I had a student in my class one year, and so an undergraduate at Columbia. So she or he is in her 20s, right? And she got shingles because she was immunosuppressed, and she got the shingles. She or he got the shingles vaccine. So you could ask Daniel. That's a good question. Daniel at microbe.tv. I want him to answer that. Okay, please send it in, or else I'll ask him tomorrow. Yarrick asks, can you tell us your favorite hypothesis for the origin of viruses? So you probably just mean giant viruses, right? All right, so I'll tell you my virus origin idea. It's not mine. It's just what I have read, right? Because I don't do research on it. So once the Earth cooled enough, there arose self-replicating RNA molecules. So RNA was here before DNA, and there was a whole RNA world of molecules that could self-replicate, and maybe eventually they coded for proteins, and those proteins would include reverse transcriptase, which could convert the RNA to DNA, and then that led to the establishment of cells, right? Protocells and then cells. And so as soon as there were cells, these are self-replicating RNAs went into the cells, captured a gene for a capsid. They repurposed it to be a capsid and went out into the world as viruses. So the question is, how much, besides the capsid, how much did they grab? How much did they steal from the cell? They could steal a little bit or they could steal a lot, right? These giant viruses have lots of sequences. So maybe they stole a lot and left in their giant virus. I mean, the giant viruses have been around a long time. We just only discovered them recently, right? But they have been around a long time. So I think they're simply part of the way that viruses emerged. Now, some people say they are degenerate cells. But there's no evidence for that either. There are no genes that look like they came from cells, although the capsids do look like they came from cells. And maybe some viruses kicked off the genes they didn't need and they became smaller. It's really hard to know. So you can't really rule out one or the other. So the giant viruses could have come originally from those early cells. Protocell, the earliest cells, eventually became what we know as the cell today, with mitochondria and nuclei and so forth. And the viruses may have picked up more and more genes and left as giant viruses. The idea that a cell lost genes and became a virus just doesn't feel right to me. But I can't provide a good argument for why I don't think that's it. Yeah. So speaking of all this, people are talking now about the color of the sun and what color you see, blah, 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 okay? There's an RNA element in viruses called an IRES, IRES. It's internal ribosome entry site. And I always ask students, what's the color of an iris? Of course, the iris flower, right? But this is RNA. It doesn't have any color. It's not really that funny. Yeah. We Homo sapiens are pretty much blind. Yeah, and it gets worse as you age also. I used to see pretty well. I need glasses. John wants to know by what method is the measles vaccine attenuated? This wasn't treated with a chemical. It was passaged in cells. many times. But let's find out exactly. Yeah, it was passaged in cell cultures and chicken embryo cells multiple times, like a lot of polio vaccines, yellow fever vaccines, right? Yeah. Thank you, Melinda. I appreciate it. I thought everyone would leave. Well, 20 people left after Daniel left, but that's fine. I just wanted to get some questions in. I really missed, shouting out everyone where they're from, because I like that at the beginning, but I didn't think we should take time away. It takes 20, 30 minutes, and we needed to go right into Daniel. So I hope you forgive me for that. Okay, Spamlet writes, don't let naysayers put you off JoJo. I was late to you because I was watching her launch a new live Substack called The Siren with very keen young people who can boost you into a wider community. Wayne says, I think the age 50 thing is more about, with Shingrix, is more about insurance coverage than medicine. Now, it may be that it was trialed. The clinical trial was only done in people over 50. Let's check that out. Usually that explains these age limitations. Yeah, the initial clinical trials were done in individuals 50 and over. So that combined with the age dependence and the incidence of shingles is what the reason for that is, I believe. F. Yang writes, who I met at ASV. Nice to meet you. By the way, the phage nucleus thing from the recent TWIV really reminded me of the viral eukaryogenesis hypothesis. Yeah, the idea that viruses took part in the evolution of the eukaryotic cell. I don't know, but I think eukaryotic cells must have originated from, it had to come from somewhere, right? And we know there are these replicators, self-replicators in the RNA world. There was a big RNA world, lots of RNA molecules everywhere. So how do you get to DNA? Well, I said reverse transcriptase probably emerged, but then you have DNA, and how do you get a cell? I just don't know how that happened. And I don't know how an RNA molecule would let that happen, right? The eukaryogenesis thing. Les writes, if they defund childhood vaccinations overseas, there are an estimated 14 million deaths. Right? While RFK Jr. is not intentionally killing children, his body count would be much, much higher. Well, he's not intentionally, but he's going to result in their death, right? Because he's taken away funding for Gavi and USAID, right? Two big sources for purchasing vaccines. And so he really thinks that vaccines cause chronic illness and you shouldn't be taking them, and that infectious agents like viruses do not cause infectious diseases. So you don't need vaccines. That's his idea. So we're going to do RFK Jr.'s experiment. This is a guy, a lawyer with no background in science whatsoever. We're going to do a massive experiment on people, not just overseas, but here in the U.S. as well. You will see COVID vaccines are going, HBV vaccines are going, polio vaccines are going, MMR vaccine. You'll see in the next year or so, it's going to get rid of them all or make it so The companies don't want to make them anymore. And then you're going to have a huge increase in infectious diseases, at which point someone's got to step up and say, what the hell are you doing? These vaccines prevent diseases and not the kind that you think they cause. My gosh, I can't believe we are letting this guy do this and no one is saying anything. Well, many people are saying anything, but no one in government is saying a bloody thing. No one in Congress are saying anything to get rid of him. So I guess we need to have more deaths before someone is going to step up. Oh, now we got into milk. Oh my gosh. Milk, milk, milk. I have often said we don't need milk as humans. This is a manufactured industry and we don't need it. Office Hours, Will says, is unique in offering live answers to our questions. Thank you. You're welcome. That's the way I always envisioned it. That it would be that way. Thank you, Office Hours. Just a goat. Thank you, Vanity. I mean, I don't know why more people don't want to come, but the 100, 200 people is enough for me. You guys always have tons of questions. And, you know, the non-believers would be a pain. They would be annoying, right? Jeff writes, regarding the first cells, what amazes me is that enough of the required chemicals required for life's processes got trapped together inside a lipid shell or membrane in the first place. Yeah, I know. It's very hard to understand. So there is a hypothesis that the structures on the bottom of the ocean, not the vents, but there are other structures, set up the first gradients, electrochemical gradients, and were capable of generating energy, which would be a step to the first cells. But how that would happen, I don't know. Remember, the first cells are bacteria. No, we are not goat milk here. No. What did I say? Oh, very interesting study. So as you know, body odor, right, happens when your skin bacteria metabolize chemicals that you make, and that's what makes the odor, a volatile. It turns out that certain populations lack the enzyme and an enzyme to make those chemicals that the bacteria would degrade and make you smell. So notably, South Korean people they don't have this enzyme, so they don't have body odor, and they largely do not use deodorant. Interesting. But I know a lot of people that they don't use deodorant and they smell, and they don't use deodorant and they don't smell. Or they use deodorant and they smell too, but that's different. So it's very interesting that it's an enzyme deficiency that would cause that. Yeah. I'm not going to talk about milk. No. Bobby writes, there's no data on under 50s, but lots of people are getting shingles in their 30s and 40s. It's a very safe and good working vaccine. Whoever makes it should really get some new trials going. You know, I believe there's a trial ongoing for using Shingrix for the kids' chickenpox vaccine, right? And maybe that will decrease the incidence of shingles. Now, it's not going to prevent infection. So the chickenpox vaccine doesn't prevent infection. It prevents chickenpox. And so in a fraction of people, you're going to still have latent virus around to become shingles when you age. So I wonder if Shingrix would have an impact on that, because the current vaccine used in kids is an infectious attenuated vaccine. Very interesting. So the other thing about milk, of course, is that you can make cheese from it, which is great. So if you don't like milk, that's fine. We don't need cheese either, but it's very delicious, especially if made properly, right? Yeah, there's so many good cheeses, right? You could walk into a Whole Foods where they have a huge cheese section. Oh my gosh, it's so delicious. And they will let you taste them too. Let you taste them. F. Yang explains viral eukaryogenesis. It basically says the eukaryotic nucleus comes from things like a virus factory or phage nucleus. Yeah. It's basically saying endosymbiosis with mitochondria is a rare event. Well, the acquisition of mitochondria only happened once, apparently, in the ancestor of all eukaryotic cells. But yes, these viral factories, like in Mpox virus infected cells, you have a virus factory in the cytoplasm or the phage nucleus, which is, again, in bacteria, so there's no bacterial nucleus per se, but they establish their own center. I don't really like them calling it a nucleus, but it is encased, right, in a membrane. And those could be the ancestor of the eukaryotic nucleus. But I don't know that it happened that way. I mean, if these early RNAs went into cells to pick up a capsid and then they infect a new cell and set up a factory, maybe that becomes a nucleus. So I think it's compatible with it. Yeah. Honey, now we're talking about sugar, erythritol. Jason writes, if people don't want to eat fermented dairy foods, then eat kimchi or similar fermented vegetable foods. That's okay. Viruses. Rima sent me some delicious honey from a local farm. Thank you for that. It's all gone. Yeah, cow's milk are for baby cows. They're not supposed to be for humans, is my opinion. We don't really need milk, right? Belinda writes, I consider many different perspectives, but not just mainstream science health, but I still prefer some level of studies. Well, I think you can only make conclusions based on studies. And you can't always do a placebo-controlled clinical trial. Sometimes you do observational studies, and that's okay as long as they're controlled for things that could obscure the results, right? John writes, for some reason, hearing Vincent talk about milk reminded me of Robert De Niro in that movie when he asked Ben Stiller, I have nipples, Greg, could you milk me? Jeff writes, the reason that Congress is allowing this willful negligence to happen is because of the GOP, due to their belief in the market. They believe government is coercive, which is all right for religion. Yeah, well, they're wrong. Mark wants to know if the first cells got ATP directly from phosphoric acid. ATP, DNA, lipid bilayer, all conjugate bases of phosphoric acid, right, before they got mitochondria, right? Could be. Could be. Sally writes, you can treat recurring shingles with valacyclovir. That's right. It works very well. RFK Jr.'s own mother and siblings did not want him to run for office. But, you know, Caroline Kennedy, when he was being interrogated by the Senate committee for confirmation for this head of HHS, she said, you can't have this guy in charge of healthcare. No. It was a great letter that she wrote. She really speaks out, and it was really, really good. It was read recently on a recent Beyond the Noise. Yeah, no mini lecture today, because Daniel was here. I didn't want to have Daniel, and then with the possibility that he would go an hour and a half. He was the mini lecture, as very Nika says. But next week, we're going to have a mini lecture on DNA sequencing, history of DNA sequencing. Yeah. Yes, this is it. Nick Lane, he writes great stuff on evolution, mitochondria, oxygen, and the evolution of life. Really good. Yep. Yep. Pete, Vincent missed my question on the Ad26 vector model vaccines. Are they a dead duck? Well, I think currently they are, and we actually know how they could be modified to prevent the clotting disorder. But I don't know that anyone is going to test them, is going to do that and test them, actually. Yeah. Okay, Noir. Parmesan is the crap cheese. Parmigiano is the authentic Italian cheese made in Parma. Parmesan is crap. Don't buy Parmesan. Parmigiano. That is wonderful, crumbly, incredible sharp taste. Yeah. And mozzarella is great too. Mozzarella is wonderful. Vincent, I'm going to send you socks. Why are you going to send me socks? What did I say that makes you think I need socks? Okay. Symbiosis and parasitism are everywhere. Yeah, it's everything is a symbiosis or a parasite for sure. I mean, look, we're full of symbioses, right, with our microbiomes and viromes and so forth. GOP lawmakers are devoid of virtue, the essential requirement for the Constitution, according to Madison. Yes, they are, and I can't believe how they defend, what the administration does blindly. And when they talk, they're just lying, and it's just so bad that you can't believe it, but many people just do. It's amazing. Yeah, we're victims of Project 2025. That is what's going on exactly here. And, during the campaign, Trump said, I am not following that plan. Baloney. He was lying like he does every time. And now we're following it to the word. You should read it to find out what else is going to happen. So F. Yang writes, phosphate is a very convenient handle that binds both metal ions and protein side chains very well. It's everywhere in life, and my boss is fascinated by why life chose it. Well, life didn't choose it. It just was part of the evolution and selection, right? If one gets shingles, should they get a Shingrix shot? So Daniel has been asked this before, and he says yes. Yes, so yes. And also prevents dementia, right? Remember that. Parmigiano Reggiano is the one, and then Pecorino Romano is a different kind of cheese, both for grating. Parmigiano is great for eating chunks, right? You go to Italian parties and they're big piles of chunks of Parmigiano Reggiano. Pecorino is much sharper. It doesn't have that lovely smooth taste that Parmigiano has. And I would not eat chunks of Pecorino, but you might. It might taste good to you. Vincent just went all cheese. Okay, I'll stop. Anyway, I'm going to stop. Questella. I'm obsessed with them from the best socks. They're the best socks. Okay, you can send me socks if you want. Okay, folks. Let's stop it now. It's 9:58. I'm just looking at the last comments here. Pete, I'd love to tell Vincent the story of a cafe owner when we visited Reggiano years ago. Before the official merger of Parmigiano and Reggiano, DOC, too long for 200 characters. I didn't know that. It sounds cool. It sounds very cool. Richard writes, in these dire times for science, I reach for Microbe TV. That's what we want you to do. You don't have to pay for it. It's free. Ricotta salata. Yes. Hard. Whenever you think of ricotta as the soft stuff you use in eggplant and cannoli, not cannoli, the tubular pasta or ziti with ricotta. But it can be dry and hard, and you can grate it and put it on pasta. That's really good. Sock it to you. Yes, sir. Well, that'll do it for another office hours. I want to thank our moderators here. Let's see if I can remember. We had Vanity Nutrition, Les, Steph, and Tom Weinberg. Thank you all so much for being here. I know you had some moderating to do tonight. We always do, and I appreciate it. I thank everyone else for coming. We had nearly 200 people here. Most of you stayed. I appreciate it. You like the chatter. We will be back next week. Let's see the date. Today is the 6th of August. Oh my gosh, folks, summer is almost over. I know it's September 21st, but to me, August is over. That's it. Summer's done. Wednesday, August 13th, 8 p.m. We'll be back next week. And until then, I want you all to stay safe. Love you all. Good night, folks.